Welcome to Unscripted with Russo. I'm your host, Ashley Russo, president and executive producer of The Peak TV. For our podcast, we decided to explore the people behind the narratives. I'll introduce decision makers and influencers who are winners in their field and find out the intimate story behind their rise to success. Welcome to Unscripted with Russo, and I have a wonderful guest here today, my dear friend Elaine Zelker of Elaine Zelker Photography, Color Street, so much more.
Yes.
An author.
Yes.
You do it all.
Yes,
Welcome, Elaine.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited.
I know. So glad that you're
very
here.
nice.
Well, you have a lot of businesses. You have a lot of things going on. You are full throttle, full steam ahead, building your brand. But before we get into all that, I want to learn a little bit more about you. So tell me about yourself. Like, where did you grow up? What was your family like?
Very nice. So I actually was born in Philadelphia, and I am the youngest of three. I have two older brothers. And when I was 18 months old, we moved to South Jersey. So I grew up in a town called Willingboro, New Jersey. It's kind of outside of Cherry Hill, Marlton area. So I grew up down there, and I grew up very different than a lot of my friends up here. I was double dutching and breakdancing through high school. And so I was in a very diverse neighborhood, which was awesome for me. It was definitely helped build my character for who I am today. And so I grew up in South Jersey. I went to Rutgers University in New Brunswick, and that's where I got my bachelor's in psych and business. You want me to keep going, like that kind of history?
Sure, go ahead. I'll jump backwards.
And then after I took a year off after I graduated from Rutgers, and then I went to nursing school. So I went back and I got my RN.
So it's been such a journey. I mean,
oh my God.
You know, tell me when you were a kid and you were talking about double dutching and the neighborhood that you grew up in. What kind of kid were you? You had these two older brothers. Describe yourself at 7, 8 years old. Like, what were you like?
Complete tomboy. Can you imagine me not being a tomboy? Well, maybe not.
Maybe
I
can definitely. You're pretty
glam. I can glam it up, but then I can play tackle football with like nobody's business right afterwards. So
you're I mean, for those who are listening, you're petite. I mean, you're a tiny little thing. Yeah.
5'1".
So
under 100.
You didn't care.
No, God, no.
Tackling.
So, I mean, I had no choice but to defend myself against my two older brothers growing up. I grew up in a very old-fashioned Italian family where I felt like I had 3 fathers growing up, so they were always protective and watching me and harassing me, but instilling to me to be a total, a total, I'm going to say badass, but I'm afraid to curse.
That's all right.
So, okay.
Go ahead. We don't have
So
any
a complete
rules.
badass, because I felt like they wanted me to be a strong, independent woman. I was the first one to go to college in pretty much my whole family. My dad was much older than my mom. They were 19 years apart.
Wow. Yeah. I don't know if I knew that.
No,
okay.
My dad was born in 1924. He was a World War II veteran. He was a POW in World War II. So he had this whole complete life before he met my mom. And he was previously married and all this stuff, the stuff that we found out many years later. And so he met my mom, and they got married, and they had 3 kids together. And so when I was growing up, my mom was a stay-at-home mom, and my dad was 20 years older. So my dad retired when I was 5. He had a heart attack. So I pretty much had my parents every day since I was 5 years old.
Wow. And he retired from what? What was he doing?
He worked for the military. So he worked, and he was like a runner and a driver at Fort Dix and stuff like that. So he worked, with the government most of his life until he retired. So,
and what was that like, having your parents around? I mean, not many kids can say, oh, but my parents were home.
So it's so different because, a lot of people, like my dad was my friend's grandparents' age. So I literally, don't laugh at me, but I was playing bingo and going to the track. My dad had me at the track betting when I was 5. I went $2 at Monmouth Park to win on horse number 5. Like, I was doing that at age 5. He'd give me my $2, go up to the window. I would play pool, pinochle, like poker every day.
You were like his little buddy.
Oh, 100%. And I was the youngest. So, but I also had the most gusto, I think, out of the 3 of us, because he always told me, like, you need to go in the military. Out of the 3 of you, I think you've got the balls to do it out of all of them. And I'm like, of course, so he also taught me there's a reason why I'm telling you all this, because I lost both my parents, and I felt like I had so much of them when I was younger. I had so much more of them for a longer period of time than most people I know ever had with their parents in a lifetime, because they were always there. So I learned all the Italian stuff from my mom, how to cook, how to clean, all my DIY stuff. So the crocheting since I was 5, knitting since I was 5. I knew how to do a sewing machine when I was 8 years old. So all that DIY stuff that I do was instilled from my mom since I was little. But my dad took me on. I know how to change my tires in my car. I can change my oil. I know all about woodworking. I can use every tool in the garage. I redid my entire bathroom myself at my house. So they instilled so much in me.
I have to say, because as your girlfriend and someone that we get together socially, and well, I know it, but you are one of those people that I feel like every time I have an interaction with you, there's like one more layer. I mean, you are like an onion. Like there's always something more. They're like, of course Elaine can do that. Yes. Oh, well, no, that's no surprise. Yeah. But you're accomplished in so many ways. So I love, do you feel like that sense of I can do it, can do attitude and just try it came from that time with your dad?
Absolutely, because they instilled that there's, whether you're a woman or not, even though I really did grow up in a very old-fashioned Italian family where, dinner's done, you get up, you clean the table, and you're doing the dishes. My dad made me a 3-foot stool when I was little so I can reach to wash dishes when I was very little, and that's very old school. And but they also instilled to me that there's nothing I cannot do. My dad always put me on a pedestal, but not in a braggy type of way. He was very proud of me. I was his youngest. I played the violin, so he'd be the front row with the plant. I always say plant because I'll never forget, he embarrassed me by giving me a big poinsettia at a winter concert. Everybody else gets roses, and here comes this big plant,
I love it. He gave you
But he always was so proud of me and really instilled that there's nothing I cannot do. And but I followed a different path then because I did go to school I had a psychology major, then I went to nursing school. But I took a photography class at Rutgers and I loved it. But back then in the 80s and 90s, I felt like I couldn't be an artist.
Right, that wasn't a real career. That wasn't a thing.
100%
when you were talking about the violin, what were some other activities you were into? Did you play any sports?
Yeah.
What kind of things did you do?
I played softball. So I was captain of my softball team. Back then, though, we didn't have Little League and all that stuff for girls. I think I made the varsity team as a junior in high school, played junior year, senior year in high school. I did play violin since the 3rd grade. So I played a little bit in college, and I can still pick it up and do that.
I was just going to ask, is it something you ever pick up? I've never seen you play the
No,
violin.
there's a video on YouTube, on Facebook somewhere where my friend caught me playing when she came over one day, and she was like, wait a minute, what's happening? She had no clue that I could play the violin. I played cello for a little bit, so I always loved music and doing things like that. But I was very active in high school. I was one of those kids where I was on the pom-pom squad, and yet I also hung out with the international kids, and that because I was very diverse and I had that opportunity that I was kind of the popular, but then I hung out with the kids that weren't because I didn't want to be in a clique. So I kind of did everything and I meshed all that together.
When you look back, what do you think were some of the formative lessons that you learned through your childhood? What are things that you take now and really think that helped shape who I am?
I think it came a little later that life is so short and you need to appreciate life every day and treat each day as if it's your last. When I was 34, I lost both my parents, one after another, 18 months apart. But like I said, I was so blessed I had them for so long. And that there's nothing I can't do. We struggled a lot. We didn't grow up in a rich neighborhood. I wore my brother's hand-me-downs growing up. So not that I always had something to prove, but I always knew that I could do better if I worked at it, if I physically did it, and nothing is ever going to be handed to me. And I knew that from watching my parents struggle. But we struggled, but we never needed for anything. That makes sense.
Yeah, amazing balance, right? And when you talk about being the first person to go to college, was that something that your parents had wanted for you? Is it something you wanted for yourself? Was it a struggle? Did they not want it?
No, it's weird. It was kind of like my older brother went, so he went. The second brother did not go, so I was the third, and it was no option. I definitely was going to go to college, but I remember doing it all on my own. I don't remember my parents, definitely not my dad, saying we should go visit this. I'd never even visited Rutgers before I went. And I got the application, I filled it out. I was pretty smart. Yeah.
It's amazing though how many times you talk to our contemporaries and our parents really weren't that involved in our class projects.
Nothing.
And our
I didn't even know what an engineer was. Honestly, when I went to college, and I graduated high school in 1989. I had really big hair. I missed that. We're bringing it back, though.
We'll be including a picture. So for anyone viewing this podcast, they'll be able to see that.
Exactly. Yeah. But it just was nothing that was instilled to me to do, but it was something, it was almost a given. I was pretty independent. I went at 17. I started school at 4 instead of 5. So when I went to college, I was 17. I didn't turn 18 until December my freshman year. So I was young when I went to school. And I just never went home. I mean, like I worked right away and I always had a career, always.
When you got out of college and you hadn't gone into nursing yet, what did you do for that year, that gap year, let's call it?
So I did move back home because I didn't work right. I didn't stay in the New Brunswick area. I wanted to go back home and save some money. And I managed a store called Color Tile. So it was like a home improvement store with rugs and tiles and stuff like that. But it was my first like management job. And I liked it. It was like just to make some money on the side and stuff like that. But that year, really, I was figuring out what I wanted to do. I met my first husband, Scott, my freshman year in college. So, and I stayed with him throughout college and wound up marrying him. So my freshman year, I met my first husband. So I met him. So basically, after college, I was like, am I going to go move in with him? Like, what's going to happen? And if I can go back to when I was a kid, I remember being a kid and looking and playing with my dolls. I had one of those TV stands, those carts that are coming back in fashion now that are in everybody's homes, like the bar cart. So I had a TV stand in my room that I would put my dolls on and wrap them up and pretend it was my hospital gurney. So I always knew at that point that I wanted to do something in nursing or to be a doctor. I wanted to be a pediatrician originally. So when I finished college with my psych degree, I liked psych, but I knew I would have to go back and get my master's. I didn't only want to be a psych major. Like, I didn't just want to do that. I knew that I wanted to treat more people all over the spans of life, so that's when I went to nursing school.
Interesting. Yeah. And where did you go to nursing school, and how long did that take?
I went to, it's a small school. It was a diploma program because I already had my bachelor's. I didn't have the money to go back and get another bachelor's, so I went to a diploma school called Charles E. Gregory School of Nursing. There was hospitals. It was a hospital-based program through Old Bridge, Rowden Bay Medical Center, and Perth Amboy. So in Old Bridge in New Jersey and Perth Amboy. So I did that for 3 years, graduated number 1 in my class.
All right. Number 1, not surprising.
Number 1. No, but Rutgers, some of Rutgers was a complete blur. I did not get a 4.0 at Rutgers. I think I ended up with like 3 something, or if that. Maybe a 2.7.
I love it.
So Rutgers, I definitely had my wings. Yes, exactly.
And then what happened with nursing? Like, did you find something in nursing that you felt was your thing?
I did so much in my nursing career. So I graduated that in 97. And in the meantime, I got married in 95. I had 3 daughters in 6 years. I had my first daughter. I got pregnant in my senior year of nursing school, and I freaked out. I'm like, oh my God, I was married, and I got pregnant like 3 months before I had to take my boards. And I'm like, oh my God. So I remember sitting there with a belly and taking my nursing boards. And I did all this work, and then all of a sudden I was have to have a baby, not have to have a baby. I was having a baby, and yet I have 7 years of college behind me. I was ready to work, but I still have that old school mentality that I'm going to be home with my baby.
You're going to be home, yeah.
Yeah. So that first year, I struggled with putting them in daycare with all my children. I didn't really put them in daycare if I didn't have to. I would work the 3 to 11 shift, and my mother-in-law would come over and watch the baby from 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock or 4:30 when Scott came home. So they really weren't alone or in daycare for the first year, and I would work 3 to 11 shift.
And then you could be home with them during the day until you would go. But
Mm-hmm.
also kind of cool and progressive for your ex-husband, because he would have the kids in the evenings and be, that's more common now, but you go back 20 years and it wasn't as common.
And it is 21 years ago.
Yeah, it's amazing.
But it worked because he was getting his master's, and I was only working part-time, so maybe a few days a week. And so I think part of me for the last 20, maybe the last 15 years, not even, maybe the last 10, 15 years, I did put a big part of my life on hold. I still did stuff, and even when I wasn't doing nursing stuff, I always had this major creative side in me. I always was bringing in income. You're gonna laugh. I don't even think you know half the stuff I really did.
Can't wait to hear. See what I mean?
Yeah,
the onion.
Yeah, this is the onion. So I'm pulling back more layers. So when I was not doing nursing, and in the beginning of nursing, I just did, staff nursing. I worked on a gerontology floor. I did, diabetic patients and stuff like that. Then I did some pediatric nursing. I did some ER nursing. Then I got a job in dermatology nursing, which I wound up working for 10 years. I wound up managing his company, but I'll get to that. But when I was staying at home, I did all kinds of things to bring in money because I felt like I needed to be an independent person, that I never wanted to be 100% dependent on anyone. Even though I had that instilled in me, in the back of my mind, find a guy that's going to take care of you, there was still a huge part of me that I'll never be that person. So I used to make cigar box purses. I would make jewelry. I had EMC jewelry designs back in the day where I would make the custom bracelets for moms with Swarovski crystals. So I used to make jewelry.
Where were you selling this stuff?
To friends. And we didn't even have Facebook back then. So I would have my own home parties. This is before Stella and Dot. So, all these other companies. I was doing network marketing from my house.
Before it was even a
thing. Before it was a thing. So I would set up like jewelry all over people's homes, like on their living room tables, and take custom orders and make them and do it at night. I was always bringing in income somehow. And then I remember I always did scrapbooking, and I always was taking pictures. That was a huge part of who I was. My dad always had a camera around his neck. After they passed away, I have buckets full of photos, half of them blurry because it was just film cameras back then.
There was no way to know.
No, how do you know? And we still kept them on. They're still in albums for some reason. Like, how do you put blurry pictures in albums? But they're there.
It's a memory.
We all have that. Yeah. We're there somewhere. So I always took photographs throughout my kids growing up, which was something that I always did. But I never thought I could do anything with photography. I never thought I could step it up and take it to the next level. I just loved shooting, and I loved doing scrapbooking and just always capturing those memories back in when my kids were growing up. So then fast forward, in 2006 and 2007, I went through some turmoil in my life. I lost both my parents. It was very quick, and things happened in my life, and I wound up getting divorced in that 3-year span.
Wow.
So
that's a lot of loss in one time period. So you lose both your parents so close together, and then go through a divorce, which a lot of people say is like
that's
going through a death.
And I think it shaped going through the deaths. I think definitely put me in a place mentally that I checked out for a little bit. It was not easy. I was 95 pounds. I was raising 3 kids, and I had to put on this brave face that everything's great, living with the Joneses in a neighborhood on a golf course, that everything's perfectly fine, and it wasn't. I was a mess inside. So.
What was it that you kind of found, obviously going through the loss of your parents, but then what inside yourself kind of almost cracked open and said, I need a different life. Like, I want something different for myself.
I think the death of them. I remember talking to both of my parents. They knew the true me. So my mom's name was Elaine as well, and I'm Elaine, and they called me Laney growing up. So I was always Laney to everybody in my family. So when I introduce to myself now, it's always Elaine, but if you were with my best friend in my family, of course they're going to call me Laney. So I remember on both of my parents, when they were dying, they said something to me, and it stuck with me. They said, in your marriage, and I'm not putting anybody down by any means. I'm still very close with my ex-husband. We're good friends and stuff like that. But they would say things like, you're Elaine when you're with him, but you're not Laney. You're Laney when you're with us. So I was never myself. I felt like I was always putting up a guard. I was always being somebody
almost
that I maybe
playing
wasn't.
a part that you thought you were supposed to play.
But I was also trained that.
I
was trained that way to be that person. You go to college, you marry the first guy that you ever kiss, pretty much. And in my life now, I've only been with 2 men my whole life. I'll be honest with you, my first husband and my second husband. I still have that old school mentality deep within me, and I still believe in some of those things. But once they passed away, talking about the onion being peeled, I finally felt like I didn't have to prove something to them anymore, and I wanted to be who I wanted to be.
Sort of an odd thing, because in some ways you're so close with your parents, and they were such a guiding principle in your life, and at the same time it almost sounds like that gave you some sort of freedom.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that sounds
sad.
like
it's sad to hear that way, but it was.
But it sounds like it was allowed, like it gave you a rebirth, maybe, or it allowed you to tap into some part of yourself that maybe you had restricted.
They never saw me as a photographer, which blows my mind. And I know we say they see me, they know that I'm.
Yes,
it's not the same. They never saw me. Making a career out of doing something in the arts.
It's funny because you here you are in the Lehigh Valley, and I want to talk about how you got here. You're so well known and so respected as an artist, as a photographer, as someone creative, as someone innovative, a branding expert. These are the things we know about you, and it's really interesting. And I think it's important for people that are, especially younger people that are listening, to hear, because you're in your late 40s, and it's really like it's really a 40 plus iteration.
I didn't
of
find
yourself.
me until I was 38 years old,
and that's important, because I think people think that at 20 years old or 25 years old or 30 years old, like it's all there. And what I love about this podcast is so many people, you hear this transformation happen at some point in their life, and rarely does it happen very young.
No,
it happens
doesn't.
somewhere along the way. So tell me about that transformation as you as you come out of this dark place,
Yeah.
you go through a divorce,
Yeah.
you've got 3 beautiful little girls. What is next?
I meet the crazy filmmaker Zeke Zelker, of which, you know, back then I'm like, you know, I'm a single mom with 3 kids. And I meet him at the tail end. And I have to go back because I met him after my mom died. I took my girls and I were taking a class of like doing some acting on the side and some modeling stuff. I was helping their self-confidence and stuff like that. And I took the class with them because I'm 5'1". I'm like, no, there's no way I could model. So maybe I could do a print thing with these nice teeth that I had, you know? So I took a leap and I started doing things like that. So when my mom got really sick and she was getting ready to pass away, there was an audition for Zeke's film. That's how I originally met him. I went on an audition for In Search Of.
I don't know if I knew that.
Oh my God, yes. And I didn't do anything on the casting couch or anything like that. I didn't even get the role. He didn't even give me the role, but I wound up getting the director many years later.
You hear that, Zeke?
Yeah.
She remembers.
Yes, I remember. He knows I remember. So, because the person that got it, I tease, and not that person, but I tease him for the person that, you know, whatever. We won't talk about
Wasn't
that.
you.
No, it wasn't me.
We know it wasn't you.
Yeah. So I could have done it.
But you did have an interaction.
So I met him, and there was kind of a connection, but I was not in that place of like, my God, I was married. I met this guy, and I'm a type of person, he knew this right away. I don't care what you do. It's about who you are. I could care less you're a director. I can care less if you're a famous person or people know who you are. That means nothing to me. As long as you're a nice person, then I'll, you know, that's the person I want to meet. So I had met him in 2006. And I didn't see him again or talk to them until maybe till like 2 years later, when after my dad passed away. And we reconnected. I think his grandmother died or something like that, and he was doing something with In Search. I put an email. I'm like, hey, how are things going with it? I had tried out for it a few years ago. You know, it wasn't even like a flirtatious thing at the time because I was just literally, I got a townhouse. I had gotten separated from my ex-husband. And he's like, yeah, so we just started talking as friends, and then it just kind of blossomed. He was really intriguing to me, you know, but he was a single dude. Like, he had no kids.
And it's really interesting because, you know, Zeke, is, you know, he had never been married.
No.
He didn't have children.
No.
And he's
2 years older
than you, but he's basically your age. So, you know, you're like these totally different life experiences. Here you are, you've been married, you've raised 3 kids, you're raising
different
3 kids.
And he comes in like a bull in a China store, you know, and
Zeke is also really owns his creativity, so that had to have been very appealing.
It was intriguing to me.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Very interesting.
In a way that, because I always envied that, because like I said, I was trying all these things in the art, making jewelry, painting, doing all these things.
But almost
like always
like
an artist
like a little bit on the side, a little bit hidden, not on. And Zeke is very unapologetically artistic.
This is who I am.
Yeah,
this is what I am.
He's this amazing chef.
He also has
a filmmaker.
Exactly. But he also has a business background. He worked for Merrill Lynch and ran numbers, so he's also a very analytical type of person too. And he was very smart, and you know, I like intelligence. That's the turn on for me. Like, I like having a good conversation with somebody. If it's with business, certain numbers I'm not the greatest at. If it's with science, I absolutely dig that. Like, I get into stuff like that. So we started off by having these like majorly long conversations. Never even met. Like, we weren't even seeing each other. And then I remember, you know, coming out of this divorce and stuff, he's like, you know, I kind of maybe felt something for him, like, and I thought he did as well. And we were kind of like, you know what, you're just coming out of a divorce, maybe you should date other people. And I think I went on one date and I talked about Zeke. So how terrible is that? You know, this poor guy, you know, I'm like, I'm a single mom with 3 kids. I always also felt like, who's going to want somebody with 3 kids? And, you know, then at the same time, I'm like, well, F you if you don't, you know, because I was that confident that I could be on my own and do things. But there was still that part of me that I wanted a guy in my life. I wanted to have security, and I wanted to, old school keeps tapping me on the shoulder. You need somebody to help take care of you and stuff like that. And,
well, and also it's more than just the financial piece. I think that idea that you're building a family and that you have this life together and I, you know, sharing that with someone is a special thing.
Yeah, and I never wanted my kids to see me dating people or doing all this stuff. So at that point, I think I was seeing maybe 4 or 6 months before I even introduced him to my kids, because I wanted to be sure if that's going to be an introduction to be had, it's going to be somebody that's going to be serious in my life. And we finally did, and it wasn't a year later we got married. So it wasn't like I needed to test all the chocolate to know I like chocolate. So really, you know, when I say I was with 2 men, that's basically, I mean, dated a little bit here and there, but I just
nothing
knew.
Serious, you know.
No.
And what in that journey, you know, we kind of left out a little chapter, which is that you worked in dermatological nursing for a long time. So you worked in a dermatology office.
So I did that, and then hospice nurse was a big part of my nursing too. So,
so you did a lot with hospice care. I mean, clearly you're a caretaker.
Yeah,
you love people. You love taking care of people. What transformed after you married Zeke and you moved to the Lehigh Valley? You've got this different life now. When did the Elaine Zelker that we know
Okay.
and love
Yes.
kind of emerge? When did that start?
So my first was we moved to Forks Township in 2005 or 6, somewhere around there. But for my right after Katie was born, my youngest. So
Okay, so you had been in the Valley.
I was in the Valley, but
Okay.
just for a short time because I didn't grow up around here. I lived in Stewartsville, New Jersey. I lived in Edison, New Jersey, Middlesex, New Jersey, moved to Stewartsville, and we kept going west, and we found a house in Forks Township. So we moved there. So I didn't grow up around here. And then after I met Zeke, I was really torn in a lot of my hospital jobs at this point because I shifted a little bit. I left dermatology years before that. And because I was commuting to New Jersey for that with my 3 kids, and I slid off at 78, and I said, I'll never do this again. I was pregnant, actually, and I had my 2 daughters in the car, and I slid off at 78 going to North Edison. From Stewartsville, New Jersey, is an hour commute. I said, I'm not doing this anymore.
That's a lot of driving.
So I gave that up, and I'm still very close to the doctor, and great experience of using my nursing and my business background to really help grow that practice into a self-sustained, cash-flowing company. So I always had that business acumen behind me to be a good salesperson, and especially because of my pharmaceutical sales. So then I did pharmaceutical sales through some of that, and I won trips from it because I could sell anything, especially when it was medical related. Then I went into hospice nursing, and I was working then for another company called an LTAC where I was pretty much had to fill the bed. So it was like sales and marketing for a hospital, very high stress job, meeting quotas and expectations. And I have connective tissue disorder, so kind of like lupus type thing.
Mm-hmm.
Not true. My mom had lupus. I have like similar. And stress can kill you. I literally was killing myself from stress. I was on very high doses of medications that help connective tissue disease. And my doctor finally said to me one day, and I'm married to Zeke at this point, very stressed out with my job and probably also the grief all still coming out and dealing with a lot of anxiety issues. She said, I want you to take 10 days off. And at this point, I was doing some photography. I liked it so much. Zeke told me, he's like, you're really talented. Like, why aren't you shooting more? I'm like, I don't have a really good camera. He got me a camera. He was a filmmaker, so he had some of this stuff already.
I love it. He's peeling away your excuses.
Exactly. So he wound up getting me a camera. I started shooting neighbors and friends, and then I started liking it a lot more. And then I had to start turning people away because I had to go to a job that was like sucking the life out of me. I called it the golden handcuffs. I had great opportunities. I had great income coming in. They paid for my car, my internet, my insurance, my 401k. But yet I was almost in the hospital because of stress. And I knew, like, life is too short. What am I doing? So my doctor took me out of work for 10 days. She said, I want you to take a 10-day break. Zeke and I went on a trip. I talked a lot about it. I prayed very hard. I remember literally on my knees in the shower crying. Like, I don't know what direction to take. I need to not be in this life. I've already left other things in my life where it's just not working for me and life has been taken away from me. Why am I doing something I don't love? And I jumped ship and I never went back, and that's 10 years ago today.
Wow,
like now.
That's amazing.
So I jumped ship 10 years ago. So
what do you think it was in that moment, though, when you were on your knees and you're just, you're away from it all? What was like the final straw? What was the reason, if you can pin it on one thing? And what would your advice be to somebody who finds themselves in a situation where they don't really know where to turn or what to do next?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I prayed. I really felt that there was a higher power that got us through by the grace of God every month, and we survived it, and we made it every month. 2 entrepreneurs, 2 people now that have to pay for everything. I had 3 kids. You know, I'm like, not for anything, but like I do say, like, balls to the wall. You know what I mean? Like, I had to be all in, and I knew it was all on me, but I knew confidently that I can do it. There's no way that, because I had to do it now. It was different. It was different than saying, oh, I can just get by. No, I had no choice now to do this. So I'm 110% in.
And what was that first, you were doing the photography on the side, and then you said you took the leap and you went full time. Was the photography business the first focus?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I left nursing and did that to solely focus on photo shoots. Then I got I never shot in my house. I always found something. So Zeke and I shared a space on Northampton Street in Easton. We had a small space in the Northampton building, I think it was called at the time. We had a very small closet, little space. I had some backdrops. I was inviting people there. I was doing a lot externally. I called myself a natural.
I like that studio.
Not that one. It's a different one.
Oh, not the one I've been to?
That was the second one.
I like
so it was
that
the first one, the little one. So I called myself a natural light photographer because I had no studio light. So that's basically why all the natural light photographers.
Well, talk about branding.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
Exactly.
And what has that sort of evolution been since then? You know, you really have become very, very known for your headshot photography.
Yeah.
And that's something you do just beautifully and incredibly well. Why that?
Okay.
I'll
tell you what happened. So for the first probably 7 years of my photography, I branded myself as being ElaineZelkerPhotography.com, right? So everybody knew me as a photographer, but everybody in the Valley now only knew me as a photographer. I'm like, well, wait a minute. There's so much more to me than just being a photographer. And that's something I teach in my class now. You're not just anything. I knew I was so much more than that. I knew based on my experiences that I can offer this knowledge, this sales and marketing and business acumen that I've instilled in myself, that I can teach other people this. So about almost 3 years ago, I dropped the photography part and I just created my own brand of ElaineZelker.com, because now it's going to have people ask me, well, what does that mean? What do you mean, Elaine Zelker? What is that? They knew me as a photographer, but I knew for me I was so much more than that.
It was almost your ability to, the photography gave you the launching pad.
Absolutely.
But it was really then your ability to say, but there's so much more, and open the door to the possibilities.
Absolutely.
What came along with that? What was like the first thing that you added?
So probably the branding stuff. So I created this class called the Easy Method to Branding, and which is so I hated my initials when I first married Zeke. I'm like, my initials are easy. And they would tease me about it, like, oh, Elaine's easy. I'm like, well, if I'm going to have these initials, I'm going to utilize them somehow. Right. So finally, I came up with the acumen, the easy method, which now I'm using big time. So I instill that in all the aspects of the small businesses I'm doing. So it's the easy method to headshots. If I'm teaching headshot photographers how to do headshots, it's the easy method. The easy method to empowering people now. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. And I knew that I needed to share this knowledge and share the philosophies that I've learned over the last few years to empower other people to use their skills and talents to shine and to soar. Because that's the first thing I tell, especially women. I definitely focus more on women because I've been there. And I know
you've been through it. I mean, the thing is, you're not just preaching it. You've actually lived and gone through the fire of a lot of this stuff in your life.
Of which not many people know about. This is raw. I mean, this is a lot of stuff coming out that's not known.
What do you feel are the main pieces you want people to know about themselves? Like when you're getting to the core of the easy method, what is it at its base?
That you've got to ignite the fire that's in your belly. It's there. We are made on this earth to do something, not to do nothing. And I help other people find that in themselves by journaling, by taking apart their layers of the onion to get to the core of who they are. Because you need accountability partners, right? You need people in your life that are like-minded to help you get there. I want to be that person for big groups of people at a time because I want to make the difference in as many people's lives as I can while I'm here on earth. Like, so I have such a more
think back to the younger version of yourself. Did you ever have thought this is what you'd be doing?
I probably, honestly, I knew that I was bigger than life. I always was, though. I mean, I always walk in a room. I was the life of the party. I was always the jokester. You knew I was in the room, put it that way. I think, though, by becoming a mom and a wife, I put it on a back burner for a long time. Not that I'm saying I regret that by any means. It was who I was at the moment, and I shined in those roles. I have 3 amazing, beautiful, strong-willed, empowered women in my life as my daughters because they've got me as the trainer and the teacher, and they love that. And what I teach other people is the same thing I'm teaching my daughters every day. I'm so blessed to have that.
When you're teaching your daughters, and of course your oldest daughter, Julia, is just getting to the point of getting the end of college. Yes. She's getting there, and she's just so smart. I mean, your girls really are truly incredible. What is it that you tell her and her friends, or what is it that you want, some of the young women on my staff to know about who they're becoming right now?
The biggest thing is, first of all, there's nothing you can't do. Just like when people ask me, they ask you, it's like, oh, like, what can't you do? Nothing. The answer should always be, there's nothing I can't do. I will die trying to do something if you test me or if you ask me. Why? Like, what is the reason? So
why limit yourself?
Exactly. Yeah. So, and what you and I've talked about, and we read some of the same stuff that, not that we get bored, but when we accomplish something and we get to the point when we're done, the next thing out of our mouth is next.
Yeah.
I'm done. I've succeeded in that. I've mastered it. I will teach it now. Next. What's next?
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's amazing because life feels like we talk all the time because life is such an adventure and there's so much going on and there's so many opportunities. But if you don't seize the opportunity and you don't go to the next thing, how do you know what could be next in your life?
Absolutely. And especially young girls, there are so many, or stay-at-home moms especially. I was that. We were that, and it's like, there are so many platforms that you can utilize those skills and those talents you have. You can make great cookies. Well, we have platforms now that you can go sell those cookies while you're still taking care of your children. I picked up the side business of doing Color Street on the side. Not because I needed that like another hole in the head, but it's a direct sales company. I went into that not to just get pretty nails on the side. I went into it to empower other women and show them how they can create money and a side income and a side hustle.
What's happened with that
and
business?
Now I have 180 people on my team, and it more than pays for my mortgage every month. So, but I'm training other people that you can do it too. I'm going to show you how if you just follow along. It's not that hard. We're not recreating the wheel, but
do you ever step back, though? We talk all the time about when you are a business owner. You know, you're really, in a lot of ways, you're in the trenches. There's a lot you have to do every day, but there's a lot. Do you ever stop and step back and look at the picture of where you've come and where you're headed and sort of say, wow, I'm really creating my, because I think it's important that we do that. I feel like it's important sometimes to stop and reminisce, look back, feel good about what you've accomplished, and then say next. So you and I, we're always saying next.
It's hard for me because even when you talk about me, like when you're this and you're a great this, you're a great photographer, I don't think of me that way. Like I still put my head down, I'm like, okay, I still have work to do.
Yeah.
I don't feel that I'm there until I master something. So like if you talk to me about headshots, I can school people now with headshots. I'm that confident in my skills, in my abilities, and my ability to connect with somebody because I've mastered that skill. Doing the whole branding stuff now, and I'm still building that, it's become a new jargon for me. It's become a second language to me, and I'm mastering that now because I can't wait to dump that into so many other people because that too will become a second language to me that I'm teaching other people. Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely.
So it's not, I don't feel like I sit back and say, okay, I'm basking. I'm not yet.
Well, you know what? Digging. I don't think anyone that's super successful ever says that.
Digging.
When you read,
and I don't know if I'll stop at this. You know, I still see it bigger than this is.
For a couple pieces of advice, what would be your advice to working moms out there, just in general?
You are you first. You know, if you have to love yourself first, because if you don't love yourself, nothing around you is going to work. 100%. You've got to put you first. That's really it. I mean, if you can't feel confident enough in yourself, I don't think you can be successful in these other things in life. So, you know, being confident and loving yourself first and respecting yourself first is primary.
It all starts with that. And what about somebody who wants to be an entrepreneur, somebody who's thinking about starting a business? What would you say to them? What's your advice to them?
You cannot just be an entrepreneur. You've got to be multiple levels and multiple people in one. You've got to be a smart business person. So take those classes. You can be an artist. You can take some business classes. I have a bachelor's in psych and a minor in business. Took accounting, took microeconomics, took statistics, you know, because you've got to know how to run the business. You know, one of our good friends, Lenore, gave me that book, The E-Myth, and it will never leave my mind.
You've Such a good book. It's right by my bedside.
You've got to be the entrepreneur. That's great. That's the dreamer, right? But you got to be a business person as well. And you also have to be a technician. You've got to know how to do the stuff to get the dream. You got to know how to manage the dream. You got to know what the overhead is. Because many entrepreneurs fail because they're not a business person as well. And they fail.
Yeah.
And they kick themselves and then they start all over again.
People think that it only starts with vision or an idea. And while that's important, you've got to have the foundation. You've got to have the building blocks, the legs of the table to build the table.
Yeah. And I also believe I went through will always have a mentor in my life now. I've learned that over the last 10 years. If you want to soar with the eagles, you've got to find the other eagles to train you, and then you can soar with them. I talk to you about this a lot, that, you know, we've got to say goodbye to the naysayers and the chicken and the pigeons down here because they're dirty and all they do is whack, whack, whack. We want to soar with the eagles. So you fly with the eagles and you put yourself in the company of the people that you want to be like, right? So you find those people. And once you're there, for me, I feel like it's our responsibility now to teach other people. I am never going to be a type of person where it's going to be me at the top of the mountain. I will constantly be pulling people up there with me because that shows that I've done my job.
That's right. You want other people with you. It's lonely to be up there.
Absolutely. It is lonely.
Yeah,
and a lot of
want people along on the journey.
You know, being an entrepreneur, having a studio, it gets lonely at times.
Yeah.
You know, but I put the work in big time. If I'm going to teach somebody an hour, I promise you I'm doing 100 hours of homework.
Right. And you also are living it. You're walking the walk that you're talking, you know. Yeah. Before I let you go, because I think Soaring with the Eagles is a great conclusion. I just want to do a little rapid fire. We do sort of rapid fire at the end here, just fun random things. Yeah. What would be your last meal?
Pizza.
Oh, good. Okay. What's a place you've never been that you'd love to go?
Sicily.
I've never been to Sicily either. Oh, maybe we have our next trip.
I know. Girls' night.
I love it.
Girls' week.
I love it. Do you have a pet peeve?
People being douches.
You better put an R rating on this.
Sorry.
This
oh my
podcast.
God. Yes. I told you earlier when you came in, I want to get a shirt. # don't be a douche.
Yeah.
Like,
just easy,
be nice
right?
to
Just
people.
be a nice person.
Be nice to people. Always give back. Like it's part of my teaching. I go over the Ogmandino scrolls. They were taught to me. These are the philosophies behind how to be a great person, how to be a great salesperson. And there's these scrolls that you read multiple times a day, and they instill in you, and they truly are in my being now. And the second scroll is, I will greet each day with love in my heart. Not only for other people, for every person I look at now, I look them straight in the eye, and in my thoughts, I say, I love you to you. And that treats everybody differently.
People can feel that. People
Absolutely,
can feel when that
100%.
radiates from you.
And that you also have to love yourself first, because you can't do that without doing this first. So I train this a lot in the class that I'm teaching right now, so that I go over the scrolls and people eat it alive because they need it.
People
want to learn
Our
this.
society needs it.
Yeah.
What are 3 words you would use to describe yourself?
Energetic. Persistent and disciplined.
And I would say fierce and loyal and smart.
Yes, thank you.
What is one place that you've been that you love, the best place you've ever been?
Florence, Italy. My daughter just came back from her study abroad, and she's been so humbled by the experience that we helped her get, and to be out there. Hopefully for graduation next year we can go back again, and she wants to show me the real Florence. And, my parents would have been so proud. They were both, my mom was Italian from Napolitan, and my dad was Sicilian. So now you know why. My roots are there, and I need to see the real underground world of Italy when I go back.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, Elaine Zelker, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much.
You are a mentor, you are a friend, you are a photographer, you are a crafter, you are a leader, you are a community member, you are all of these things rolled into one. And if we cannot be inspired by you, there is no one that could inspire us. So
thank you
for being here. I'm so proud to call you my friend.
Me too.
I can't thank you enough for how many times you have helped me and been there for me, and just sort of been the behind the scenes backbone of Ashley Russo and ASR Media. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're wonderful. You guys have been listening to Unscripted with Russo. Thanks. Until next time.